Brad. Okay. Well, I want to see your sweater. What are you wearing? Come on, I want to see. Oh, look. Oh.
Running clothes.
A hoodie. I don't know. We don't generally let people into our study sessions wearing hoodies. It's kind of
Rabbi Davids, this is from 2 years ago. I went to Israel with Rabbi Buchtal 2 years ago, and this was the hotel. So I use that as my virtual background for this session.
Got it.
I can do that too.
Okay, let's see. Oh, Merle's. You got a hoodie also. All right, maybe that'll become the identifying dress of the Chevra Torah. Next week we'll all show up. Mine is right over there, and I am not going to get it. So I just thought I'd point that out. Oh my God, I can see Joanne. That's a life-changing event. Hi. And Hannah, thank you for getting up early and being with us this morning. Thank you. Okay, Mara, tomorrow we're going to then get started. I have 3 announcements. 3, holding up 3 fingers. Number 1, I am going to start teaching a class sponsored by Wilshire Boulevard Temple on current events. Cindy, on current events that impact the Jewish communities in both Israel and the United States. We're going to meet every other week. It's going to be Tuesdays, noon to 1 p.m. It'll only be on Zoom. Beginning in January, it'll be January 11 and then January 25 for the first 2 dates. But it'll be every other week, Tuesdays, noon to 1 p.m. on Zoom. And I wrote this down here. We are going to have open and respectful discussion and disagreements. That is to say, we're going to have to be nice to each other, but I am not peddling the necessary correct thinking. Everyone's point of view is going to be accepted, and all that we ask is civility. Now, that may be a lot to ask, but we are asking for civility. So we're going to be talking about current events that impact.
What are you saying, Rabbi? I can't come?
Pardon?
What are you saying? I can't come?
Yes. Yes. Okay, but continue. Yes, you asked. That's the answer. But we're going to be doing this. Okay, Karen is there. We're going to be doing this January 11, January 25th, Tuesdays, noon to 1 p.m. Current events that impact Jewish communities in both Israel and the United States. I am planning to have a great deal of fun, and it should be fascinating. This is continuing something that began with at University Synagogue. Morally, Rabbi Feinstein was doing this, Cindy, for how long?
Many years, but it was an activity group, and now it's open to everybody and no charge.
Yeah, this is wide open. This is for everybody. And Cindy, I would like if you could take the time sometime this week, jot down what you think were the good things, style, structure, and suggestions for how to do this. You've been through this.
The main thing is he gave us an understanding of the political system, about the various parties, what they each stood for, which ones support Reform Judaism, which one don't. So when they had the election, I actually understood it.
Okay, super. We're going to go for it. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It'll be not a free-for-all, but a civil opportunity to discuss what's going on. I've already started creating a library of things that I want to raise on that event. So that's announcement number 1.
Just for starters, I think a lot of us.
January 11, January 25. Hi, Mona. and it's Tuesdays, noon to 1 p.m.
I think Syria and Iran would currently be near the top of the list.
I don't even know where those places are. I will not get drawn in. You'd be amazing the self-discipline I have. Now, moving on to the second announcement. We have, first of all, it's a great group of people today. I didn't expect, but I should have known better to expect. It's great to see you all here. You do know, or some of you know, that I have vision problems. It's not really a vision problem. I'm mostly not able to see, so it's no longer a problem. But the only time that it impacts is that I cannot easily see anymore your raised hand, like when you put up your hand like this. So what I would ask you to do, if you can remember, is to, under the button at the lower part of the screen, far right, where it says reactions, it says raise hand. I just hit that and look how it shows up on my face. So what I would ask you to do, please, to whatever extent possible, use that option. It will, 2 participants raise their hand. Why, are you playing games with me? Okay, so thanks, Howard. That was cute. That was very nice. You're in a bad mood today, people. What's up? Okay, so it's just because I have trouble seeing and I miss seeing the hands. The yellow hand will make it easier. Even then, I don't guarantee. There are a few problems with vision, and I ask for your understanding. Third and final announcement, I've been having a rather interesting forays into the larger Jewish community the past few weeks, and I find out that there are more people watching whom I don't know are there. And so all I'm doing is saying hi, everybody, and it's really, really good to be together and to have that opportunity. I don't have anything. That's because so Jim doesn't show up when he doesn't have an ad to run, but don't tell him I said that. I don't have any announcements to make about calendar. Does anybody? Cindy, you raised your hand. And
Sorry, I was just going over to reactions.
Yeah, okay.
Got it.
There you go. Oh, Cindy, yes, thank you.
Okay, just a really quick run through. Usually Sisterhood does a lavish holiday party for the women's shelter. This year we couldn't. We sent over platters. We sent over gift bags for all the residents, which included socks, toiletries, and towel sets. So thank you to anyone here that donated. I know Brad rode his bike over to my house to donate. So anyway, we were able to do what we were able to do. Our January Sisterhood meeting, due to the current situation, will be Zoom only. We're continuing sales of Mahjong cards. Our tournament in February most likely will be postponed because the current rule this week is no eating inside, and you can't have Mahjong tournament without Chinese lunch. This year, we don't feel we could do a Tu B'Shvat Seder. It doesn't work well on Zoom. So with the concept of trees, we are focusing on the family tree rather than fruit trees. And we're going to have a happy hour guest speaker on ethical wills to pass down to your family tree. And that will be January 20th, 5 o'clock, open to everybody, Zoom only. So that's it.
That's really a shame you're not doing anything, but maybe things will ramp up. That's terrific, just terrific. The question was asked in the chat, are libertarians and conservatives welcome? Conservatives, yes. Libertarians, I have real trouble, but I guess I'll say yes to that too. Yes, of course. Yes, of course. And again, there'll be no snide comments about what a foolish idea, my idea is correct. No, it's wide open and it's going to be a discussion. What I'm going to do, I think, is make a presentation on a topic, open it up, people will react. Okay, I see Merle, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think I received an email saying that the grand opening of the new building at the Glazer campus has been postponed.
That is true. That is true, painfully
The
true.
celebration's postponed. The building is opening for
Right.
events as scheduled.
Yeah,
Right, I meant the celebration.
the actual celebration, yeah.
Right,
I actually, I don't want anyone to find out about this, but I was given a private tour of the building last week.
we won't tell anyone.
Don't mention, it's just like Beinenu, Beinatzman, it's just our own little thing, and it's spectacular. Okay, so checking in now. Hi, Carrie. Hi, Ray. Welcome to Hawaii. So we have a Hawaii living group and we have Hawaii picture. Okay. And I asked my granddaughter last night or this week where all her friends are. They apparently all are in Hawaii. Everybody. There was a mass exodus to Hawaii. Checking in. Are there anything's happening in your lives that you would like to share with us? I see Doris.
Yeah, Rabbi, I missed the first few minutes of your talk and I don't know what you were talking about. Are you going to email that to everybody so that you can catch me up? I apologize.
A quick sentence. I am going to be starting a class on current events Tuesday, January 11th, noon to 1 p.m. every other week, twice a month. Well, every other week. And it's a wide open discussion without preconceived conclusions. All I ask is for civility. Okay. That's it. Okay, we're going to go forward, and that's delightful and it's wonderful. I've used this reference to Aviva Zornberg before when talking about this particular Sedra. Our Sedra is Exodus, the book of Exodus, the chapter, Exodus chapter 1, verse 1 and following. We are now beginning the story of the birth of the Jewish people. That's how we ought to understand what's going on in the book of Exodus. My perspective is going to be not that this is an historical retelling of the birth of the Jewish people, but what we're looking at in the book of Exodus is the intentional shaping of the story of the birth of the Jewish people, so that there is intentionality in how everything is created. The intentionality comes from the work of the editors and the authors of the book of Exodus, and things flow so as to conclude with, and when we entered the land, we entered as a people. So we left Joseph at the end of Genesis. We left him dead, but backing up a little bit, we left Joseph at the end of Genesis, and all of the family of Jacob had moved to Goshen in Egypt. They were there, but they were there as tribes. They were the children of Jacob. They were there as tribes. Now, coming out of Egypt, they will be merging into what we would call Am. And you know the word Am, like Am Yisrael. Am means a people. Now we are becoming a people. It's going to take 4 books, but by the time we enter the land, we are going to be Am. If you look at, and here we're going to be on page 346 in the Plout, page 308 in the Women's Commentary, in verse 9 on page 346 or page 308, verse 9, it says, Ve'omer Elamo, Hine Am B'nai Yisrael Rav V'atzum Mimenu. First reference. Pharaoh says to the Egyptian people, look, Am Yisrael, much too numerous for us, the people of Israel. This is the first time that ever we are referred to as Am. And there's a point to it, and the editors make that clear. There's something else that's going to be going on in this book, And it's good to be aware of it. We are going to be drawing differences between Israel and Egypt. In many ways, when we read the discussions of what the Jews, Israelites do, by the way, they're not Jews, they're Israelites. I keep slipping, sorry. What the Israelites do is going to be painted as the opposite of what the Egyptians do and how they live and what the chief focus of their thought and their faith is. I kind of believe that was very much a concern of the editors of the book of Exodus, who and in their period viewed Egypt as the enemy and the antithesis of what it meant to be living in an Israelite kingdom. Egypt was constantly threatening the southern part of that kingdom, and at the same time, Egypt was constantly an attraction for those who wanted to oppose the threatening empires to the north. One of the options that the Israelites, Judah, Israel, etc., had, one option was to cooperate with Assyria, with Babylonia, with Persia, and so forth. Another option was to partner with Egypt against them, because Egypt was constantly battling those other empires. And of course, the little Jewish kingdom happily was right in between. You could go into rebellion. You could do a variety of things. By the way, later on, we're going to see how very much Egyptian thought penetrated the Jewish community. One of the best examples I can think of is certainly the rabbis emphasize this. The Egyptians were heavily interested and invested in creating environments in the world to come after death, in which things can be celebrated. You decorate the pyramid for the rich. You put the food in. You put other kinds of things. They should have a good time. Maybe a movie theater, maybe McDonald's, anything in there, so they would be good in the world to come. The emphasis within Judaism is going to be increasingly, for a period, what happens in this world. The Egyptian concern for the Book of the Dead, the Israelite concern for, if you will, focusing on this life. But there are a lot of things, and there's heavy borrowing. A lot of what we would consider to be Jewish writing is adapted from the Egyptian world. And therefore, you have a dichotomy, and you're going to see it in this book. To put it simply, the good guys, Israelites, the bad guys, the Egyptians. And it's going to be that way. The Egyptians possess a false narrative. The Israelites possess a truthful narrative. The rabbis love the word Mitzrayim, love it. It's a good name for Egypt, Mitzrayim. Ilu Hotzianu mi Mitzrayim. God brought us out of Egypt. Boy, Dayenu, that would have been enough. But Mitzrayim, the word, can be said to possess the term narrow, Narrow, narrow. And the Israelites will portray themselves as widely open, eventually with Isaiah and beyond, to a universal God. The Egyptians are narrowly focused. They are living in their Mitzrayim. They are living in their narrow place. Narrow and constricted Egyptians, expansive and growing Israelites. So hold on to that as we go through the text. Just be aware that when the Egyptians are portrayed in a certain kind of a way. There is intentionality to that, and that's kind of interesting. Aviva Zornberg says something else too. And, you know, when a great teacher says something that encapsulates what you're thinking, you say to yourself, why didn't I think of that? I mean, that's obvious. That is such a truthful statement. Said this: Israel, the Am, cannot really be born in Egypt. In Egypt, Israel, the descendants of Jacob, Joseph's time, Israel is like a fetus in the womb. And that's going to continue, by the way, the image of Mitzrayim as a narrow place. Zornberg does that, and it's wonderful. The fetus to be born needs to go through a narrow place. The crossing of the Red Sea is a narrow place. The fetus of the Israelite future, Egypt, it must pass through Egypt. It must pass through the narrow place of the Red Sea to be born as Israel the people. Israel the people. Any question about this? Okay, I see Steve Miller's yellow hand.
One of my a commentary in my version actually suggests we were sort of a people. It says Pharaoh was not afraid of the number of Israelites, but he was afraid because they had become a nation capable of united, purposeful action. So in some sense, we maybe not fully developed, but we're essentially, maybe from being shoved together in Goshen, a people of sorts already in Egypt.
Yeah, and I have no trouble at all with that. You know, we're you know, when is that moment of birth? The fetus contains the potentiality, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. The fetus contains the potentiality of being the full people. It doesn't have to be drawn so closely, but there it is. Yeah, and this whole story in the Torah, it's the story of our emergence as a people. It's a story told to undergird what is happening to the Jewish people primarily after the destruction of the first temple. And this creates the backstory and gives us our origin. I would like to point out one more thing. If you could look, this is only in the Plout on 340. It doesn't have a page number, but I suppose it's 342. If you have the Plout and turn to 342, if you look, I don't quite know how to do this except to say there is a map here, and let's see, are you, well, okay, there's a map here. And interesting because right here is Mount Sinai. Okay, would you please, if you have it, to look at it, here is Mount Sinai. It says so on this map, and that's very nice. And then it says on the map, right here is Mount Sinai. Okay, so that's Mount Sinai. Then it says on the map, right here is Mount Sinai. Are you getting a picture? Okay, so you look at the map and Mount Sinai is there. Oh, if you look over here, here is Mount Sinai. Okay, so it's Mount Sinai there. And if I run out of Mount Sinai's,
I see at least 6.
oh, wait, there's one over here. There's a Mount Sinai over here. Okay, so when I and my family in the 1970s early climbed Mount Sinai, rising up at 4 o'clock in the morning, climbing the mountain, Effie, I see you and I'll get to you, I promise. Oh, and Eric, okay, and Stanley. I don't know why mine's out. We were leading a group of teenagers. Kids slept on sleeping bags on the desert, climbed the mountain. The kids were kvetchy and they were climbing and it was fine. Then the guide said to us, still before dawn, we are having this wonderful experience of climbing one of the 13 places potentially identified as Mount Sinai. Do you know what that did to the excitement of we are climbing Mount Sinai? This is climbing one of the 13 places. But since this is the only one of the places I climbed, I assert that I climbed Mount Sinai, and that's the way I handled it. But it was like, then I found out that the guide was from basically the Israeli Society for the Preservation of Nature. He was a guy who loved the outdoors and knew all the world, and he probably was right, but he certainly knew how to deflate things. If you want to find other interesting things on this map, I see one sea of reeds. I see a second sea of reeds. All this to indicate that we don't have a clue as to the actual geography of Mount Sinai, of the desert, of the crossing out of Egypt. What we do have is where Goshen is. Oh, there's a sea of reeds up there too. I found another one. So there are at least 3 seas of reeds here. We don't have any idea where they went. We don't have any idea about the travel pattern. We don't have any idea of what waterway they crossed. If you look on the map to the, I can do this without moving my hand, left center of the map here, it says Bitter Lakes. And I know that Bitter Lakes was one of those places that was absorbed in the building of the Suez Canal. The canal, in fact, went through that. So is it possible, since that was one of the sea of reeds and that was the lake that they crossed, as opposed to the Gulf of Suez or any of the other places, did they just cross over that lake or a piece of the lake or whatever? Don't know. Don't know. And in case you're really, really interested, please note with the various lines, each one of the lines gives you the exact and proper route that the Israelites took through the desert. And you'll notice that there are multiple routes. There's just no way to know. And the good news is that the rabbis living in Europe, medieval commentators, of course, had no idea about the geography of the place, so they could tell you exactly where the Israelites went. And that was good. Effie, you had your hand up. Steve, Eric, go ahead. Effie?
Yes. You said that they became a nation when they entered Israel, but they were still separated by tribes because each tribe had its own physical location where their people lived. Wasn't it until after the temples were destroyed that we lost really the tribes?
Well, you know, that's really good, and I'm glad you raised that. I have the view of this, Effie, as I do of the United States of America, which used to be apparently a unified nation, which thank God it no longer is. The states formed a single country. The states retained their identity. We still were, in certain ways, a united country. And I'm going to use the same example. Yes, you're right, of course. The tribes, by the way, the Levi tribe still persists, but setting that aside, yeah, the tribes don't continue to be a force in the days of the Second Temple. But it was long before that the people viewed itself in a sense as one. Answer? Okay. Thank you. And Steve.
But we know that it doesn't take 40 years on any of these paths because Abraham went to Egypt a few times. You could go back and forth pretty easily. Were they always moving? Did they backtrack, or did they actually stop and stay someplace for years and years?
I have actual satellite images of the entire journey. Now, I will tell you this. When I discovered, and it wasn't early in my study of Torah, when I discovered that at best, the four books, starting Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, telling the story of the Exodus and the travel through the desert, really only talk about what, 2 years in detail? 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that. In fact, the Torah has a huge blank on the rest of that journey. It lists the places they traveled through, mentioned this town, this place, this oasis, this whatever. But the Torah itself doesn't tell the story of 40 years. It tells the story of go for 2.5 years. And that's where it is. The second point, Steve, is that we have zero archaeological evidence of such a crossing. Not a big surprise because there are no buildings that were built, but we have no archaeological evidence, no cemeteries, no whatever from that era. Third, I'm going to defer to Tamara here. It is my understanding that the number 40 is kind of like a magical number in the Torah. They use it a lot for a lot of good occasions. Moses, 120 years. Risa tells me that's 3 times 40. So that's good. 40 is all over the place. 40 means a long time. It really doesn't mean more than that. And next, I actually don't believe that there ever was an Exodus as described in the Torah. My limited understanding is that there may very well have been elements of what became the Israelite people or the Jewish people, however, when we define it, but that traveled from Egypt to Canaan, promised land. But Steve, between the two of us, so we don't upset Effie, I think that what I read is that there were many of those people who would become part of the Israelite people already living in Canaan who did not share the Exodus or departure story. Tamara, do you want to make me speak English?
No, I mean, you speak wonderful English. Yeah, that's the historical evidence is that some of the tribes supposedly in Egypt can be found in Israel during this period before the return to the land. So, as you said, we don't know. Some came from Egypt, somewhere in the land. They all became, our ancestors came, what is so many generations ago, we say in the American memory. Well, it's not a precise picture of American history either. It's a claim of unity and shared origin when in fact it's much more complex. So the Torah does the same thing. There's a complex history, but there's a uniting story that we use to understand who we are.
Okay, thank you for that, Eric. You're muted, I think. You're muted.
Okay, each Mount Sinai, I think, parallels each well that Abraham went to map out his territory of the future state of Israel.
Yeah, well, by the way, there are some, I don't mean to say that places that the Bible or the Torah references don't exist. They do. And places like around Beersheba, Tel Beersheba, I mean, there clearly are these places. Jericho really did exist. The background has factual pegs. The story is complicated. And my way of looking at it is that the coming into the promised land is as much a reunification of the associated tribes as it is coming in to conquer. And maybe we can talk about it on the Tuesday classes, but this takes away the notion that the Israelites came in and conquered the land, took it from somebody else. We had many of the people who would become part of the Israelite nation already lived there. I had a funny encounter when Risa and I were at that archaeological park in Ashkelon a few weeks ago. They kept saying the signs, Canaanite period, this period, that period, fine. And I turned to my cousin, who really is a student of Yediat Haaretz, of the background of the birth of the Jewish homeland totally. And I said to Mordechai, what's a Canaanite? Where did the Canaanites come from? And of course, we didn't get an answer. That's why God created Google. And we researched more into who were the Canaanites. And check it out, folks. It's a fascinating story. Were these part of the sea peoples that later the Philistines were involved with? Were they? Were the Canaanites, in fact, themselves invaders of the land? And is that not the story of so much of our world when people are trying to define, oh, I'm going on my platform, I'm sorry. Try to define what's an indigenous person. What's indigenous? The Polynesian peoples who went ahead and made the place where Carrie and Ray are now are who's indigenous? Were the Native Americans, we call Native Americans indigenous, or were they part of a population that crossed over from Russia through the Bering Straits, Canada, as we're labeling it, down into what's indigenous? And were the Israelites indigenous? We were no more indigenous than the Canaanites or anybody else. A constant flow of population. And the term indigenous, to me, is a little bit of a question. Penina.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. This is a very interesting subject because David actually bought Jerusalem from the king after he conquered that particular nation that he was engaged in a war with. He insisted of buying it. And the Israelites that we see today all over also, yes, they were there, but they also bought land. And I remember in my time, when you wanted to buy from an Arab owner a piece of land, you took a stone and you threw it. And as far as the stone fell, that was the territory that they agreed on that you bought. And Rothschild came to Israel and bought a whole bunch of land to make Zichron Yaakov, Rishon LeZion, into wineries for the Israelites. So whoever did not own it anymore at the time was actually very peacefully, it was a transaction of buying a land. And I wish we could find the deed that David got for the city of Jerusalem today. And also, I would like to say that the idea of Egypt, I'm going back to that thing, that was the time of the Zarathustra, I think, that they believed that there is only one God, and
That's
that's
right.
the sun.
No,
And
no,
they-
no.
No, that came later?
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
still, that Pharaoh was supposed to be like the son of God. He was the God. So believing in some other God actually threatened his existence as the upper power. So that's what God wanted to prove to the Israelite when he said, I'm going to kill the Egyptian firstborns, because they were supposed to be the future Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh was supposed to be their God. So
Okay,
there
so-
was here a total transformation of,
Okay, so we
like
have,
you said before, that believing that one person could be a God, and God is not
we have a
flesh and
number of
blood.
things, here, because one of the beautiful descriptions, narrative, even story descriptions of what went on in Egypt is the battle between God and a Pharaoh who viewed himself as God. And there were other images of the gods, plural. And Sigmund Freud, of blessed memory, got all wrapped up in his understanding of this competition, this God, and he talked about Ichnaton, Aton, one of the gods, and there are all kinds of things. I think that the multiple gods of Egypt were great for the tourist industry because you could keep buying images of all kinds of God figures. We don't have that, but the Israelites would come to reject all of that. But let's be clear. When did the Israelites or the Jewish people give up on idolatry totally? When were we cleansed totally of idolatry? I'm looking to see a hand. When were we cleansed totally of idolatry? We have clear indications that there were Hellenized Jews in the Second Temple period who periodically brought a little gift to one of them, our Zeus people things or something. When did idolatry really? We carried idolatry with us long after Isaiah, one God, long after that. In the Northern Kingdom, in the two religious centers in Israel, the North, there were golden calves in those sanctuaries. Notice how agitated I'm getting. Those were idols. We were worshiping golden calves long after the supposed story of what happened in the Sinai desert. So clarifying Judaism as a religion of pure monotheism took a long, long, long time. And in some ways, it's not really gone today. And that's another story for another day. But in some ways, when I take courses in comparative religion, the professors always say that the tradition that possesses the purest vision of monotheism is Islam, not Christianity by far, and not Judaism. We are monotheists, but the dogmatic monotheists, the punishing, killing, terrorist defenders of monotheism, Islam is dramatically purer in its God focus than Judaism, and certainly much more than Christianity. Certainly that. I remember, I've said this to you before, and I went into St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, and I went there because I knew that there was a memorial to Pope John the 23rd, who was a great pope, And I walked into St. Patrick's, which is glorious, and there he was. There he was, an image of John the 23rd sitting in a big glass box, wearing the papal garments, sitting and looking as he did in life, right in the middle of the church. And I remember my reaction. It was not positive. And I liked John the 23rd. He was good. Okay, so tomorrow you'd say the Samaritans were pure monotheists. I don't know even to make a comment. Tell me about that, please. The Samaritans were that pure?
I wouldn't say were, I would say are. They are the only ones who really stick to the Torah and follow what the Torah says. They look at rabbinic Jews and us as the way we look at Christians who took our tradition and did something else with it. The Samaritans stick to the Torah, and therefore they are more monotheistic than what we have evolved as.
Thank you. I want to go on into this a little bit, if I may. Brad, you had your hand up. I see a yellow hand.
Well, I'm sort of circling back to your original comments, Rabbi, about expansiveness versus narrowness, contrasting the Hebrews with the Egyptians. Sorry to bring you back that way, but I've been kind of dwelling on it because I've been thinking about the water imagery in the Torah, because up until now, the water has been associated with the well. This is where, all these romantic connections have been made. And now we have the water being, the well being narrow. And now the water becomes more expansive in the Sea of Reeds, in Moses's name reflecting a water, the birth canal. So I'm wondering, even as opposed to contrasting ourselves with the Egyptians, contrasting ourselves, with our previous selves, where we were more narrow focused and now more expansive.
Thank you. I mean, yes. Thank you. Hi, Jeffrey. Good to see you. That's a story of itself, to talk about the role of water, and broad and narrow. I so much like the knowledge that traditionally Judaism was broad, divided, disputative, had many different answers to the important questions. And I view that as a broad way to embrace the search for truth. And since the 18th, 19th century, certainly, traditional Judaism has become much more narrow in itself. And I know that we tend to look at this as if this were the way it always was, but it was more what you described. It was more disputative. It was more disagreements. It was more arguing. It was more coming to consensus, but never total agreement. Judaism was kept alive by the lack of strict and narrow definitions. And we're living at a time where orthodoxy ultra-Orthodoxy is rapidly growing with its hold on narrow definitions. And every time someone says to me, what is there that liberal Judaism can bring to this struggle for Jewish survival? That's precisely where I find myself. We are the defenders of the broader borders. And I think from that perspective, I am willing to say our defense of a multivocal Judaism is fully authentic over the course of Jewish history. And that we don't represent an anomaly or something ahistorical or a break in the chain. On the contrary. So, I mean, we could have a lot of discussion about that, but that touches really where I live. That absolutely touches where I live. I'm talking about touching where I live. I am going to do something which Effie would shoot me for if I didn't. We are now turning to the Torah text. We are in chapter 1, verse. Yes, Effie, thank you. A new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. You want to talk about one-line summaries of Jewish history? That's pretty much it. I wrote down in my notes, we have survived over the centuries dependent upon the goodwill of others. If people really want to understand the psyche of the Israeli today, you have to understand that phrase, we have survived over the centuries dependent upon the goodwill of others, is burned into the souls of many Israelis, along with the determination, no more. That's over. And sometimes when we don't understand the Israeli mindset, think about Exodus chapter 1, verse 8. When a new king arises, we have always had to justify our right to exist in a new setting. And the state of Israel exists as a claim that approach is what opened the door for the Shoah. That approach worked for 2,000 years until suddenly it stopped working. And being dependent upon the goodwill of others could mean that in the absence of goodwill, we could be wiped out. And the determination of many of us who call ourselves Zionists, one determination is, I'm going to work for a situation in which everyone is interdependent, I know that, in which the Jewish people can be less and less dependent upon the goodwill of others in order to survive. That's part of who I am as a Zionist. There arose a king. Why didn't he know Joseph? I don't know. Is it the same king? Some commentators will say, same king, had a different goal in mind, he intentionally forgot. Another one would say, different king, called himself Pharaoh, he didn't want anything to do with the arrangements of his predecessor, so another one. I mean, whatever the reason, when the political authorities of our world no longer remember Joseph, we are in deep trouble unless we are fighting for our own capacity to take responsibility for our own existence. I know we're interdependent. I know we can't be totally in charge of our own existence, but we damn well be better in charge than we were in 1935 and 1940 and 1943. I've opened a window into my soul. You certainly may jump all over and attack me in the spirit of the day. But that is a heartfelt statement as to where I am. Any comment? If not, we're certainly going to go on.
The biggest offender of Israel.
One of the reasons why some traditional Jews opposed the birth of the state of Israel was the belief that our only safety lay in being portable. If we aren't centered in one location, they can't wipe us out at one time. Many not many, there is a segment of ultra-traditional Jews who fear that the state of Israel presents a prime target for those who might arise and want us gone. History alone will validate or not that position. It's not my position. Okay, a new king arose. Pharaoh said to his people, look, the Israelite people are too numerous for us. Let us deal shrewdly with them. I love the translation shrewdly. The core root of that word shrewdly is chacham, chochem. Let's get smart. Let's get smart. What do you think about this claim the Israelites are too numerous as the first charge? Okay, Effie, I see your yellow hand.
Forgot what I was going to say.
Okay.
Go to somebody else. I'll come back.
Okay, that's a deal. Okay, Howard, yellow hand.
I think that the Exodus has a lot to do with this whole question of who's indigenous. You know, saying who are all these people? We don't know anything about them, and they're multiplying like rabbits. They're going to take over our land. That's I think that's the theme of this part of Exodus, and it's very eternal.
It is that. It is that. It is that. I agree with you. Steve, we're just running near the end.
There seems to be a lot of tension because at the same time, Moses comes along saying, we'll gladly leave you and your property and your people alone. Just let us go. And Pharaoh says, no. So they kind of wanted it both ways and needed force to keep it that way because they like the inexpensive labor.
Okay, I'm just going to grab the yellow hands and then run because we are out of time. I have to do Kaddish. Effie? Okay.
You said that some of the Orthodox sects did not want Israel to be a state. But isn't it what? Isn't it true that as soon as it did become a state, they all jumped on board and accepted it?
No.
Yes.
The largest Hasidic sect in the world is Satmar, S-A-T-M-A-R. The Satmar Hasidim absolutely oppose the existence of the state of Israel today.
Oh my.
But Chabad accepts it.
Yeah, I can offer you other examples.
Oh.
But you said, don't they all? Answer, no. No.
Thank
The largest Hasidic group in the world is adamantly anti-Zionist, and their leadership travels to states like Iran, elsewhere, to try to make common cause with them. So no. Folks, this was intense. This is good. Okay. I will add the names, Merle, and we're going to say Kaddish now. Love you all. This was a great morning, and we're going to move now. Thank you for that. And of course, next week we'll all be here, and that's fine. We mentioned those who have passed away during the month: Aaron Bender, Toby Gold, Stuart Goldman, Shirley Gordon, Wendy Kramer, Mark Levine, Harry Lipman, Sheila Bordeaux Wine. And those the anniversaries of whose deaths have occurred during the past week: Bella Adler, Don Adlin, Albert Allen, Howard Bash, Solomon Bear, Alexander Braun, Katarina Braun, Betty Browdy, Emmanuel Burton, Joanne Burton, Conrado Acevedo Cardenas, Rona Chorna, Bobby Clare, Benjamin Codd, Robert Cohn, Sam Cohn, Ruth Cooperman, David Cotter, Ann Cutrow, Gussie Dancer, Morris Danziger, Yaakov Dardashti, Penrose Desser, Sherry DeVries, Alon Eliashar, Henry Epstein, Robert Farkas, Eve Feinberg, Saul Feinstein, Jeffrey Feldman, Bernice Fisher, Marion Fishman, Elizabeth Flesh, Irving Fontaine. David Foster, Flora Fox, Rudolph Fox, Betty Frankel, Rose Steinberg Frankel, Barry Friedman, Stuart Friedman, Arthur Harold Gardner, Nejatola Godozian, Harry Gilbert, Guilford Glazer, David Golad, Phyllis Goldklang, Richard Goldman, Mary Gordon, Henrietta Gorlick, Joel Greenberg, Helene Hansen, Daryl Hirsch, Louis Hyman, Jean Israel, Marshall Jacobson, Stanley Capel, Lenore Kramer, Burton Kurtzman, Marilyn Langsam, Aaron Lask, Libelaski, Isidore Lazaroff, Myron Lester, Charles Levison, Max Levine, William Lewis, Jack Lipson, Oscar Lozebnik, Mildred Marmer, Edgar Marks, Fritz Mayer, Nathan Merlin, Asher Meshkanian, Staniel Meyer, Lynn Sarah Miller, Milans Nadzikov, Don Nathanson, Sylvia Netker, Samuel Newman, Alan Novak, Lillian Opper, Erna Ornstein, Sang Fan, Herbert Polsky, Hazel Quick, Boris Ratner, Philip Rouse, Lee Reinman, Abraham Ribicoff, John Weiss Riskin, Robert Robbins, Meyer Rofe, Edith Rosenbaum, Dessa Ross, Marion Revelson, Jamie Schaefer, Irving Sidman Shulman, George Schuckman, Harry Siegel, Martin Seller, Leonard Schaefer, Dorothy Silverstein, Saul Skolnick, Nathan Smook, David Sprung, Marion Steinberg, Susan Turk, Elliot Ullman, Lisa Walder, Benjamin Barry Ward, Sam Weissman, Eva Rice Weissenberg, Reuben Werlin, Barney Weston, Daniel Weeder, David Wolf, Joshua Young, Murray Zachary, Joel Zucker. And Merle is saying Kaddish for Faye Schlossberg and Natalie Lichtenstein. Natalie, who passed away this past week. First of all, I do make apologies for names that I have mispronounced. If you have names of people to be remembered, please speak those names out loud or in your heart at this moment. We mention as well
Debbie Feinberg, Falcon.
Those people who died in defense of the state of Israel, who died in defense of the United States, for those who died through acts of terrorism, for those who have no one to say Kaddish for them, we join together. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemo Rabbah, V'alma Divra V'ruteh, V'amlich Malchuteh, B'chayechon, Uv'yomechon, Uv'chaye B'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, Uv'izman Karim, V'imru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach, Le'olam Le'omei Omaya. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh. V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei Kudisha, Brichu, Le'ela min kol birchata, V'shirata, Tushbechata V'nechamata, Da'amiran B'alma, V'imru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba, Min Shemaya, V'chayim, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'romav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom.
Shalom aleinu.
Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru Amen. May God, who makes peace in the high places, make peace in our hearts, make peace in our homes, make peace in the household of Israel, make peace among all the families and nations of earth. And let us say,
Amen.
Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
This was fun. Okay.
Shabbat
Thank
shalom.
you.
Rabbi, I have
Shabbat
a question for you, Rabbi.
What?
I have a quick question. My sister died during the past year, and I'm supposed to say Kaddish for the whole year. Should I mention her name or should it be on the list? But you only mentioned the people who died this week and in past years.
The list is of those who died in this calendar period a year ago, 20 years ago, 100 years ago, but not the names of those who died during the year. This year, we mention the names of those who died in the first 30 days. After the Shloshim, we don't keep mentioning the names, but yes, you say Kaddish. Is that okay, Effie? Okay.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Oh, Herman, good to see you. Bye, Herman. Okay, I missed saying hello to Herman. Okay. Bye-bye. Bye, Harvey.
Bye, Rabbi. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.